Welcome to the Corporate Treasury 101 podcast. This is the third and last section of our conversation with Laurent Geunens, where we break down a use case of a PoBo structure implementation Laurent has done in his former role of a Treasury Consultant. Laurent was indeed a manager in a Treasury Practice, a Big Four consulting firm, and is now the Global Treasury Leader at Punch Powertrain. Needless to say, he is a seasoned Treasury professional with a tremendous amount of knowledge, in particular when it comes to in-house banks, Treasury systems, and PoBo, CoBo. In the episode of today, expect to learn how PoBo actually works in a real corporate environment and the interdependencies between the different systems, how to implement a PoBo structure, what are the project management considerations when it comes to PoBo implementations, whether you should consider your payments on behalf of living from your TMS or from your ERP, and much, much more. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast app. This is the best way to support us. It's completely free, takes only 2 seconds, and most importantly, makes Hussam and I very happy indeed. Last note, before diving into our fascinating conversation with Laurent, we are now on LinkedIn. If you'd like to reach out, suggest a topic, ask a question, or simply say hi, we will be happy to have you. Just look for Corporate Treasury 101, and that will be us. With all that being said, please welcome Laurent Geunens. Laurent, I believe, so before your function at Punch Powertrain, you were a consultant, right, in Treasury as well. We like to highlight or use an example of the topic we discussed on the podcast. Could you maybe walk us through, anonymized of course, a use case or an example of a PoBo CoBo structure that you have implemented for your clients? And what I would like to understand here is everything we discussed, basically. How did you set it up and why did you do it this way? What were the benefits for the clients, qualitative and quantitative? And was it fun? I think it's important as well.
Yeah, no, indeed. It always has to be fun. So
absolutely.
We have a few examples because I've did quite some in-house bank implementations, which go hand in hand with the PoBo CoBo mostly.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe as an example, we can go to one of my first clients as a consultant when I was just starting in the treasury industry, and on my side as well, didn't even understand what is PoBo CoBo, what is an in-house bank. But I got thrown in immediately, of course, with the whole setup of an in-house bank, which didn't exist yet at that company.
Perfect.
So at the beginning, of course, we started with scoping what would be in the in-house bank, what would be part of the in-house bank. Would it just be some loans? Would it be cash pooling? And in the end, it became quite a large in-house bank with some pooling opportunities, with some intercompany loans there, and of course with PoBo CoBo. Mainly PoBo, to be honest, but it was quite a large in-house bank already, and we had to develop it from scratch. So that goes from setting up the structure to linking all of the different systems that are needed in order to, first of all, recognize a PoBo, get it in your TMS system, execute it via a payment hub. So we really started from scratch there with basically setting up, okay, who is the main entity in this in-house bank and who will be all of these subsidiaries taking part. So that was the first step, really checking who can take part of this in-house bank. Once that is done, of course, it's the development of the current accounts, because they all, it's a name, it's a bit like a fake IBAN, but you have to give them a recognition point. So we started with developing a very standardized naming convention. So whenever a new subsidiary would be onboarded, they can just follow the same naming convention, and it would be clear for everybody, basically, if you're looking at the position of the in-house bank or the position of the subsidiary. Then, of course, we had to get the PoBo payments. So together with the teams of the company itself, we started developing transmission files and an interface between their ERP system and then also the TMS system, so that we could recognize the PoBo CoBos and that we could execute it. There are always, let's say, two ways. You can either really go through your TMS to recognize the PoBo CoBo and to execute it via the TMS, or you can say okay, no, I will execute directly from my ERP to a payment hub, and I will just send a message to my TMS system to let it know okay, look, I made a PoBo payment, please book it on the in-house bank, create the necessary accounting entries, and so on. Because of course you need that information not only for your in-house bank, but also for your bank reconciliation. Potentially, you might need it for forecasting. So there's a lot of reasons why you want the information, of course, to be available in the TMS system.
Yeah, I feel there is the whole setup, but there is also the importance of the information and proper tracking, right? It's not only, okay, we do it, but we also can properly report on it, have real-time information and be able to, manage the after payment on behalf of who paid what to which entity. So this whole dimension of like transferring the information from one system to another, properly tracking and reporting seems quite central in the setup of a PoBo CoBo.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really the treasury technology that plays a role. It's building the interfaces, making sure you can transmit files from system A to B. And especially as a consultant, I think the treasury technology landscape is very interesting nowadays. It's developing very, very rapidly. There's, like you mentioned, the fintechs, a lot of new players in the market with very interesting solutions. So as a treasury technology consultant, you always have to stay up to date and you have to know what is playing in the market to see the solution that we present to clients. Is it still best fit for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. In terms of benefits, qualitative and quantitative, what happened for this specific use case?
For the client, it was mainly important to basically have a good visibility there on what is happening. Which loans do I have between my intercompanies? Which PoBos am I executing? And then going further more to the in-house bank, it allowed them to automate the full interest process. So interest calculation, interest posting, and sending all those entries towards your ERP system is something that was very important for them, and that gave them a lot of benefit and time savings. Because in more advanced TMS systems, there's a lot of scheduling behind it and automated jobs. So going from a very manual process, it is now really a process that could be done 50% more efficient just because of the fact that we had some automated jobs behind it. You could get your market data automatically in the system. Your interest rates would be feeded. Everything else was coming from the ERP system. So your interest calculation at month end was just basically a validation and a control that there were no mistakes made. And then everything else was almost fully automated. So for them, it was really a time saver for the team. It could mean, of course, less FTEs required to manage a treasury, but it could also be like the treasury team being fully overloaded, finally getting room to focus on other topics.
Be more strategic topics than executing payments. Awesome. That's a question I didn't ask actually, but what's the typical timeline of a project, of an implementation of a PoBo CoBo structure? Like how much time does it take typically in your case, but also in general? I guess it will depend on the size of the project, the company and so on, but more or less an idea?
Very difficult to put a timeline on that. So it can be indeed from a few months to even a few years if you want to cover multiple regions and you have to do it step by step. So as you mentioned, depending on the size, how broad do you want to use the PoBo CoBo structure? Are you just doing Europe, or are you doing Europe, LATAM and the US, for example? But it could really take from a few months to a few years even.
And again, if you are in how to say this, not complicated location, but more regulated and where you need to properly do your benefit case and then decide to move forward with it. But then it might be more cumbersome in certain countries to set this up than in others. So I guess it very much depends on the scope.
Mostly there's let's say a banking rationalization ongoing in parallel as well. If you do an in-house bank, you will mostly set up a new cash pool structure, which starts already with checking your banking partners, who is going to be linked to that cash pool. What is my benefit case? What will my savings be? So you see, it can be a lengthy process, but it can be a very important process to keep control over your treasury function.
Obviously, and you might close bank accounts, right? Which is also one of the first benefits of the PoBo CoBo. So obviously, that's one of the exercises. Super clear. Wow, Laurent, thank you so much. Anything else you would like to add on the PoBo CoBo that we didn't mention so far?
No, I think we already discussed quite broadly what PoBo CoBo is, what it does, how it can be used, what are some real use case.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we touched upon the key items without going in too much detail. So everybody going from starting treasurers or starting treasury consultants to more experience, that they have something, they can get something out of this podcast. So, of course, always happy to further discuss more details and to make the use case more detailed. But I think for now, we have discussed whatever people need to know.
That's awesome. And yeah, I think we have something else locked, right? So we discussed the arm length and the transfer pricing. So, but that will be another episode. No, thank you so much. That was indeed super clear. And yeah, so I mean, from my perspective, well, I'm in Treasury, but I don't know much about CoBo. So that was super insightful. Thank you very much. If people would like to know more about you or Punch Powertrain, where should they go?
I think the quickest way would be to, first of all, to know more about me, the LinkedIn page. So my LinkedIn page, if they want to know more, for example, about Punch Powertrain, there's always the Punch Powertrain website where they can get all the information that they need and they can get, let's say, a glance of what we do, how we do it, and where we do it.
Awesome. We'll put all those links in the description of the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Guillaume. Thanks a lot. And thanks for having me on this podcast series.